Liz, a young single mother, saw a handsome, well-dressed man across the dance floor at the Sandpiper Tavern in Seattle. As they danced, Liz found herself falling for this man. Despite this being their first meeting, Liz allowed her imagination to run wild with the possibilities of marrying and building a family with the charming stranger. Their relationship blossomed. They went on a weekend vacation. 1 week after meeting, he brought Liz to meet his parents in Tacoma a few months later. Things were looking good for the young couple. Liz worked at the University of Washington School of Medicine. Ted enrolled at UW, majoring in psychology, and they raised Liz's daughter Molly together. This relationship didn't remain idyllic for long. On the outside, people loved Ted. He was popular with his professors, worked with the Republican Party, and answered phones at a suicide and mental health hotline. After he graduated, he got into law school, though his LSAT scores were poor. At home, Ted revealed his darker side. He became verbally and emotionally abusive towards Liz. Ted often stole items he wanted and threatened to kill Liz if she turned him into the police. Around 4 years into their relationship, female university students began disappearing. Liz noticed a pattern. Ted was never around the house when these women were attacked. It seemed suspicious, but not ironclad evidence of wrongdoing. The problem was, despite her concerns, she did love him and he loved her. Once he told a journalist, Stephen Michaud, "I loved her so much, it was disabling." Liz's concerns for herself and the safety of other people continued to grow as more women went missing and details of their attacks became clear. She believed the person responsible for these attacks was her boyfriend, Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was born to Louise Cowell on November 24, 1946. Louise gave birth at the Elizabeth Lund School for Unwed Mothers and took Ted home to live with her and her parents. To protect the family's reputation, Louise's parents raised Ted as though he was their youngest child, and Louise was his sister. They lived together for 3 years. Then Louise and Ted moved to Tacoma, Washington. There, she met and married Johnny Bundy, who adopted Ted. As an adult, Bundy gave conflicting reports about life with his grandparents and his feelings about Johnny. He changed stories about his family and childhood throughout his adult life, perhaps to gain sympathy or to blame others for his behaviors. Bundy reported that his grandfather was abusive and his grandmother was mentally unwell. Other times, he said that he admired them. He told biographers and detectives stories about his childhood that were largely untrue. Bundy claimed that he had difficulty making friends and relating to his classmates. However, classmates recalled that he was well known and popular. He also blamed his depravity on being exposed to true crime stories, sexual images, and stories highlighting sexual violence. As a young teen, he committed a number of petty crimes including theft, forging ski lift tickets, and car theft. His record was expunged when he turned 18 years old. After graduating from high school in 1965, Bundy tried out a few different colleges and jobs. He worked in politics, majored in Chinese at multiple colleges. In 1967, he met and began dating Diane Edwards, sometimes called Stephanie Brooks as a pseudonym. She broke up with him in 1968, which seemed to have been a tipping point in his development and desire to possess people as well as things. In 1973, Bundy seemed to be doing well. He had promising legal or political career leads and an outwardly good relationship with Liz Klepfer. However, his need to possess people was beginning to come to light. He rekindled his relationship with Diane Edwards. He treated her well, swept her off her feet, then dumped her in 1974. Bundy claimed that he planned the whole situation to prove that he could have married her if he wanted to. Diane believed his motivation was simply revenge. In 1974, the public began to notice as young women were attacked and or killed in Seattle. This was the documented beginning of Bundy's serial killing spree, though, in some accounts, he claimed to have killed 2 women as early as 1969. Bundy's first official victim was 18-year-old Karen Sparks. In January of 1974, he broke into Karen's apartment, pulled a metal rod off of her bed frame, and beat and raped her with it. She lived but suffered extensive disabilities. Approximately 1 woman a month disappeared in the first half of 1974. On February 1st, Bundy attacked Linda Ann Haley, age 21, dressed her in jeans, a white top, and boots, and took her away to kill her. The next few disappearances were Donna Manson, age 19, on March 12th, Susan Rancourt, age 18, on April 17th, Roberta Parks, age 22, on May 6th, Brenda Ball, age 22, on June 1st, and Georgianne Hawkins, age 18, on June 11th. He also abducted 2 women in broad daylight from Lake Sammamish State Park, Janice Ann Ott, age 23, and Denise Marie Nashlin, age 19. These women all had similar appearances. They were white and had long brown hair, usually parted down the middle. The method he used to kidnap the women was also similar. He would hang around on college campuses with his arm in a sling or using crutches and ask for help carrying his books into his car. These abductions were generally at night. Once he would lure a woman into his car, he would bludgeon her into unconsciousness and then restrain her in the car. Multiple witnesses reported seeing him approach these women. They described his ruse with the cast or sling, his car, a VW Beetle, and enough physical descriptions to create a composite sketch. When the police sketch was released to the public, his girlfriend, Liz Kepler, a co-worker from the Department of Emergency Services, another co-worker from the Suicide Crisis Line, Ann Rule, and a professor from the University of Washington all contacted police and reported their suspicions that Ted Bundy was responsible for these crimes. Unfortunately, this was not enough. Detectives felt that a nice-looking, responsible law school student with no criminal record would not likely be a murder suspect. Unsurprisingly, Bundy's schoolwork suffered in the spring of 1974, and he dropped the spring semester. He applied to the University of Utah Law School and enrolled for the fall semester. He felt unsuccessful, however. He was forced to retake classes he did not complete the previous semester. Bundy also felt that the coursework was difficult and that the other students were better at understanding the material than he was. Now in Utah, Bundy continued attacking and killing young women. In September, he strangled a hitchhiker in Idaho. He killed 16-year-old Nancy Wilcock on October 2nd, whose body was never found. Melissa Smith, age 18, and Laura Amy, age 17, were beaten, raped, sodomized, and strangled with a nylon stocking. Bundy reported that he revisited their bodies multiple times to groom them, dress them, fix their makeup, and participate in sexual fantasies with their bodies. On November 8th, he attempted to abduct Carol DeRanch, age 18, though she escaped and reported the incident to police. Later that day, he abducted and killed Deborah Kent, age 17, as she waited to pick up her brother from a school play. He was seen twice by the drama teacher and by others who reported his description and that of his car to the police. When the police publicized the details of these attacks, Bundy's girlfriend, Liz Kepler, called the police in Salt Lake City to report her suspicions that Ted Bundy was the killer. She called again in December, but investigators did not believe there was enough evidence to link him to the crimes. In January of 1975, Bundy began killing women in Colorado: Karen Campbell, age 23, Julie Cunningham, age 26, Denise Oliverson, age 25, and Lynette Culver, who was only 12 years old, became his victims in March, April, and May. In June, Susan Curtis, age 15, was also killed. Detectives suspected that one person had committed all of these crimes, but they didn't have a method for finding out who it was. So they used new computer technologies and developed a database for all evidence from Washington, Utah, and Colorado cases. Bundy's name was near the top of the suspects list. Ted Bundy was arrested in Utah when an officer saw him driving suspiciously through a neighborhood early in the morning. When the officer turned on his lights, Bundy drove away at a high speed. When he was finally stopped, the officer searched the car and found incriminating evidence, such as a ski mask, a pantyhose mask, a crowbar, trash bags, handcuffs, an ice pick, rope, and other suspicious items. When they searched his apartment, detectives found a flyer listing the ski resort where one victim worked and another flyer from a school play where he abducted Kent. They missed a large collection of Polaroid photos of his victims in various states of death and dismemberment. Detective Jerry Thompson from Utah recalled receiving messages from Liz Kepler, and he traveled to Seattle to interview her. She reported that Bundy had left crutches, plaster of Paris, surgical gloves, and a bag of women's clothing in her house. In October of 1975, police put Bundy in a lineup where DeRanch and witnesses from the high school play identified him as the culprit. He was arrested and then released on $15,000 bail. In November of 1975, more than 30 investigators from Utah, Washington State, and Colorado, and prosecutors from 5 states convened at the Aspen Summit to figure out how to best charge Bundy for the murders. They believed more direct evidence was needed to prove his guilt in court. Utah chose to charge Bundy with the attempted kidnapping and assault of DeRanch. He was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison System. In 1977, he was charged in Colorado with Campbell's murder and was transferred to Aspen in June. He chose to represent himself in court, so the judge allowed him to appear without restraints. During a recess, he asked to use the court's law library. He took advantage of the moment, jumped out the window, and fled on foot into the mountains. He managed to elude the police for 6 days. After being returned to prison, he planned another escape. He got a hacksaw smuggled in and cut a hole in the ceiling. On December 30th, when most jail staff were home for the holidays, he piled books under his blanket, climbed into a crawl space in the ceiling, dropped down into the jailer's apartment, and walked out the front door. No one noticed his absence until noon the next day. Bundy made his way down to Florida and found a room near Florida State University. On January 15, 1978, after being in Florida for only 1 week, he carried out an astonishingly violent killing spree. He entered the Chi Omega sorority house on the FSU campus and went on a killing rampage. He killed Margaret Bowman, age 21, and Liz Levy, age 20. Margaret was beaten and strangled so forcibly that her neck snapped. Liz was bludgeoned and strangled. Bundy then bit her on the right buttocks and breast, pulling away tissue. He then moved on to another room and attacked Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler, age 21. Both women lived but were severely injured with broken jaws and lacerations. They believed that he only stopped the attack because headlights from a car lit up their room and he feared being identified. Bundy carried out these 4 brutal attacks in under 15 minutes. Bundy was not done killing. After leaving the Chi Omega house, he broke into a duplex apartment and attacked Cheryl Thomas, age 21. He broke her jaw and skull in 5 places, ruining her sense of balance and causing deafness. He stole a Florida State University van on February 8 and drove to Jacksonville. He approached Leslie Parmenta, age 14, but left when her brother arrived. He went to Lake City, where he abducted, raped, and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. His fate was sealed on February 12th when he stole a VW Bug and headed to Tallahassee. He was pulled over because the car was stolen and resisted arrest by attacking the police officer and trying to run away. When the investigators searched the vehicle, they found FSU student IDs, 21 stolen credit cards, and a stolen television. Ted Bundy's trial in June of 1979 was the first nationally televised trial in the United States. He had a defense team, but he tried to represent himself. Paulie Nelson, part of his defense team, wrote in her memoir that Bundy sabotaged the entire defense effort out of spite, distrust, and grandiose delusion. On July 24, 1979, he was sentenced to death for the 3 murders he committed in Jacksonville. In December of 1979, he was found guilty of the abduction and murder of Kimberly Leach. After his convictions, Bundy began granting interviews to writers, investigators, and journalists. He shared details of the crimes and the locations of some of the bodies. Bundy attempted to escape one more time in 1984. From 1984 to 1989, he had multiple execution dates set and then stays of execution based on sentencing discrepancies. Finally, he was executed by electric chair on January 24, 1989. How did he get away with these crimes for so long? First, he committed these killings in multiple jurisdictions, which were far apart, making it difficult for police departments to coordinate their evidence and suspect lists. He also used his knowledge of the law and the way police investigations work to reduce the amount of evidence he left behind. Furthermore, Bundy was a generic-looking white male. He changed his appearance just enough to look like a different person with facial hair and haircuts. Also, by all appearances, he was charming, even to the investigators. The case of Ted Bundy has led generations of psychiatrists and criminologists to try and understand what led him to commit these appalling crimes. Most psychiatrists who review his case agree that he has antisocial personality disorder and was a narcissist. He is outwardly charming and knows right from wrong. However, he doesn't have an underlying moral compass and lacks guilt and remorse. It is also important to note that Bundy focused on what he could possess. He stole televisions, cars, clothes, and other items so he could own them. Bundy treated his victims in much the same way. He wanted to own them, to possess their bodies, and use them for his own pleasure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below.